Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call to order this May 2nd, 2025, 9 a.m. Canvassing Board certification meeting for the April 22nd, 2025 special election. I am Canvassing Board Member Julie Wise, your elected King County Director of Elections. And with me, I have Canvassing Board Member Kimberly Frederick, Chief Civil Deputy in the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and Stephanie Sirkovich, Chief of Staff to the King County Council. We are staffed today by Geraldine Hampton, our King County Elections Ballot Processing Manager. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed via the King County Elections Facebook page and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel after this meeting. Now we'll hear a report out from Geraldine Hampton, an overview of this election.
Thank you, Director Wise. Good morning, everybody. I've got a summary for you for our April special election, starting with some turnout numbers. So going into this election, we were hopeful and looking at previous like-type elections, and we projected a 31% turnout from our voters. We actually ended up shy of that at 25.6% turnout. That translates into just over 365,000 ballots due to the fact our voter count is now 1,427,000. First, I'm going to start with something new for this election. We piloted an option in April for voters to either sign their return ballot envelope like normal or to provide Washington State driver's license number, ID number, or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number to verify their ballot. This option is especially important as a tool for some of our voters with disabilities, and we're really looking forward to everything we can learn from the pilot and really digging into that data. We went through this pilot in a partnership with the Washington Secretary of State's office, as well as our vendor, Democracy Live. We had 11,000 or so people go through the pre-verification process. Around 10,000 or so of those voters actually completed the voting process and returned a ballot. That's 2.7% of our total returns were actually pre-verified via this new option. Again, this is a pilot, and this is an option that's only available for April, but we'll be digging deep into the data, like I already mentioned, and we'll be reporting out here shortly. Dropbox activity this election, because it was a countywide election, we did have all 85 Dropbox locations open this election. Dropbox returns came in at nearly 160,000. This is 44% of our total returns. That's down from the 52% of Dropbox returns that we saw in February. The most utilized boxes for this election were Redmond City Hall taking first place with over 5,400 ballots in returns. And then second place was the Ballard Library. They had about 4,700 returns at that location. Nearly half, or 47% of total Dropbox ballots came in on election day, and that is down from the 61% we saw coming in on election day back in February. For our vote center activity, we had our Renton headquarters open as the sole vote center location. We're here 20 days before the election and open to help voters with registration, accessing a replacement ballot, and so on. We issued 73 ballots to voters at this location. We had 28 of those ballots, like 38%, being issued on election day itself. For our challenged ballots, first I'll describe reasons we might challenge a ballot. They include a missing or mismatched signature on the declaration, being returned too late to be counted, or if the voter has not been validated, if their identity has not been validated, on their registration. We ended this election with just over 5,100 mail ballot challenges. Of those, 68% were returned too late to be counted. At certification, we have around 1,600 signature challenges remaining, which is 0.45% of total ballot returns. Over half, 54% of voters that did have a signature challenge returned a signature resolution form to us to help us count their ballots. That is exactly the same percentage as returned challenge forms back in February. So at this point, I would like to present to the board item E-4000, which is a list of 5,152 challenged ballots for rejection.
I move that we reject the ballots on that list.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, prior election ballots and invalid ballots. So between and during every election, we receive ballots from previous elections. For each piece received, we'll open the envelope just to ensure they did not accidentally return a current election ballot in an old prior election envelope. And so we'll count those as prior ballots and not to be counted for this election. There are also ballots we may need to invalidate for a variety of reasons, including a voter returned 2 ballots, we're going to count 1 and invalidate the other. Sometimes if a voter didn't vote that ballot, we're going to invalidate it and not move it forward for processing. We could have a voter who transferred to another county or moved out of the election area. We'll send that physical ballot to the new county and invalidate the return in our election management system. Sometimes we'll get return ballot envelopes that say moved or deceased on the envelope and there's no voted ballot inside. We'll invalidate it. Those are examples of the reasons we would invalidate a ballot. At this point, I'd like to present to the board item E-4001, which is a list of 285 prior election ballots and also a list of 175 invalid ballots for rejection.
I move that we reject the ballots on that list.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to provisional ballots. Yes, we did get 1 provisional ballot. So this was a voter who was not a voter. This was an individual who was not registered to vote, who accessed our online ballot marking program, printed out a ballot and returned it to us. We did contact that person. They did not want to come in person to a vote center to register to vote. Therefore, we were unable to count that ballot. So I would like to present to the board item PV-8000, which is a single provisional ballot for rejection.
I move that we reject that ballot.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, an update on our ballot alerts. We've added about 1,500 ballot alerts since the last election. That brings us now to over 146,000 subscribers, which is awesome. These alerts are available via text or email notifications. Voters need to opt into these alerts, and then they'll receive an alert when their ballot is mailed out to them, received back in our office, the signature verified, or if appropriate, we'll notify them if there's a challenge. We even send them a reminder alert the Thursday before the election if they have not yet returned their ballot. Voters who signed up for these alerts had a 41% turnout rate compared to the overall county average of the 25.6%. Temporary employees we hired for this election to help us out, 180 people, in addition to the 70 full-time permanent staff. We hire additional folks to help us out in a wide variety of tasks, such as customer service, ballot processing, data entry, and so on. So we definitely could not get through any countywide election without some additional help. We did have regular observer presence for this election. I trained up 25 people ahead of the election to be observers, and we had almost 50 observer visits throughout the election cycle, including a handful of folks from our Secretary of State's office. It was great to see those faces during this election. Post-election audits. So for this election, we had our 4th statewide random compliance check for signatures that do not match. On Friday, April 25th, the Secretary of State drew 313 signatures from across the state to audit. King received 204 of those signatures for our audit. We did a review and we did not see any issues, and there were no signatures that were incorrectly challenged. Every election, we also conduct a post-election audit called a batch audit. This is a process where we randomly select 6 batches of ballots. That's approximately 1,500 ballots or so, and we do a hand count of a contest. We then compare the hand count numbers to the tally that came from our tabulation system to prove to ourselves and others that the votes are getting counted as they should be. So Thursday of election week, we audited King County Proposition 1, and we found 0 discrepancies. We do an additional post-election audit called a risk limiting audit. This was our 15th RLA, as it's called. This audit was conducted on Wednesday, April 30th, and like I mentioned, was in addition to the batch audit and that random compliance check for signature miscompares. A risk limiting audit is another type of post-election review. In this case, we are taking a random sampling of individually voted ballots, not batches of ballots, and we're comparing each vote on that marked ballot against the tabulated machine count. This type of post-election audit is intended to give us statistical confidence that the winner is really the winner. So again, we audited King County Proposition number 1. We had 41 ballots to audit, and again, we found 0 discrepancies. I'm very happy to say we're now at our 38th election in a row with no discrepancies. Hooray. And looking forward, our next election is going to be the August 5th primary election. And our first canvassing board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 14th at 1:30 p.m. And during this election, we're going to go through our annual voter intent refresher training before we start to review any ballots. As I promised in February, I'm going to provide a fun fact for every election. Last election, the fun fact was how many voters turned 18 on election day. This election's fun fact is we have 150 centenarians that had accepted ballots for this election. So people who were 100 years old or a little bit older, we had 150 of them with accepted ballots. 149 of them turned 100 before election day, and 1 turned 100 on April 26th. So congratulations to those folks for voting. And that concludes my summary of the April special election.
Love the fun fact edition, Geraldine. Thanks so much. Thank you and kudos to the entire team at King County Elections, piloting a new program that provides even more access for our voters, especially our voters with disabilities that have the right to vote independently and privately, all while keeping our system just as secure. So really appreciate the team and all of our voters for turning out. Let's do some certifications and some oaths.
Julie, I'll now read you the oath of authenticity. It reads, I solemnly swear that the unofficial returns and supporting documentation of the special election held on April 22nd, 2025 in King County, State of Washington are true and correct.
I do. Our next item is the certification of the canvassing board, and it reads, the undersigned officers designated by law as constituting the canvassing board for the County of King, State of Washington, hereby certify that this is a full, true, and correct copy of the abstract of votes, including the number of registered eligible voters, cumulative results, precinct results, and report of votes cast at the special election held on April 22nd, 2025 in King County, State of Washington.
I do.
I do. This board has certified this election. I'd like to give a huge thank you to the King County voters, to the King County election staff, and to our exceptional canvassing board. That concludes our meeting today. Any further business?
No.
We are officially adjourned at 9:14 a.m. on May 2nd, 2025. Thank you.